Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're looking at a game called Hue, H-U-E, as in color hue. Maybe the main protagonist is named Hue also. This is a 2016 puzzle platformer from Fiddlesticks Games. And weirdly, it's mostly going to be black and white, so it definitely has that kind of feel of being several generations influenced from a game like Limbo, but the art style here with Hue being this white outline and then the background having black dots floating around and white sparkles all around feels very more comic booky than Limbo did. And I imagine the game is not going to be that much as dark as Limbo. So we've just picked up.
Oh, I've had the most dreadful luck. I feel terrible that you've been left alone all this time. The traitorous Dr. Gray tried to steal the annular spectrum, a ring I developed to allow perception and alteration of colour. Some call them impossible colours. Impossible for Dr. Gray, maybe. Anyway, something went wrong. I turned a strange shade and became invisible. The ring, it fractured, scattering coloured shards far and wide. I stayed at home for many weeks, watching, waiting, existing on this coloured plane. I couldn't speak to you, nor interact with anything in the mono world. So I left. I left for the university where I hid away the coloured tools I had created. I pray you have found what is left of the ring.
Okay, so I wasn't really expecting the game to have voice acting at all, so that threw me for a whirl. And I would say the audio has some balance issues that I had tried to adjust by turning down the audio in total from the menu, and listening to that, I don't feel like that went correct. So let me turn the audio up here by 5 decibels. That's should be a good attempt to at least a start. And maybe we'll just have the audio background music. This is one of those cases where the audio doesn't fully mute when you pause, but at least it gets quieter. We may find that the music itself just needs to come down. That's weird, it only goes down with the controller by 5% increments. I wonder if I was to try and pull out. Yeah, you get 1% increments when you're using a mouse, but you only get 5% increments when using an analog stick. And D-pad's not moving it around at all. Well, weirdly, D-pad does seem like it will move it, but only in weird ways. You have to go up and down instead of left and right. And it's still 5% increments. As far as other settings, there's a colorblind mode. I question in a color game whether you even should begin to try and play a game if you're colorblind. But I mean, by all means try. There's VSync, which is off by default. It got 1080p, and subtitles enabled, which in a game like this, subtitles probably should always be enabled. And then as far as actual controls, we're not really going to run into too much here as far as different abilities. Although weirdly, they have little symbols around the actions when it also is telling you just left, right, up, down, jump in action. And there is also a map and kind of a different worlds feeling that I think the map may even get more detailed once we actually get into the game. Seems to me like Hugh is supposed to be an adult man, the way he's being drawn in this mono world as it was described. makes him look more like a comic book kid to me, with the big head and the small body. It's very chibi if you were to compare it to the anime style of chibi, giant heads and anatomically impossibly small bodies, or it's frankly approaching Funko Pop levels of big heads, although Funko Pops also have very weirdly rounded heads that are anatomically inaccurate in the roundness. And it seems like we've got a whole evil professor plot going on here, which I wasn't really expecting that. Even from the main menu, you see Hugh being chased by like what looks like an angry mob. And here's our first tutorial to make sure we know how to press the A button to jump. They want you to run into problems. If you just don't know how to play video games with a controller, or if you're trying to play mouse and keyboard for the first time, they want you to run into problems where you have to be able to move left and right, which I guess would technically be your first tutorial, and hit the envelope and not avoid it. And then they want you here to learn that you can jump and learn that you're safe to fall. Take notice here, this is actually very intelligent. They start you at 3 steps, and then you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. So they want you to learn that it's going to be relatively safe to fall downward, and that you don't have to be afraid of going downward. Here you're learning to not be afraid to go upward, and here you're learning in an evolution of that to not be afraid of fall damage by falling down this way. There's no like wall sliding or anything like that that you have to do or could do. So yeah, very good tutorial section here. Here they're giving you smaller steps, which probably is just teaching you that you will expect to see smaller steps, and so just be prepared for that. Or we may really just be at a point where the game is moving us forward to actual gameplay. And here we have a character and another character. And then a big jump. Big pits. And I guess that was all a dream. We can hear a storm outside in the game. Yeah. They just animated him. Interesting. We can knock the books around. They just animated him standing in behind the bed world. So the assumption here is that this would be a 2D world, but I'm not. Yeah, I guess it is a 2D world, a 2D colorless world. And so this may be something like Fez, where we break out of the norm. In Fez, it was a 2D world that turned into 3D worlds and added a third dimension for its puzzling. In this game, it's a colorless mono world. And so we can go over here to the docks and we can see the character that we can talk to. The fisherman caught a glimpse of something unusual down past the lighthouse. Here we have a path that is being blocked by yellow bricks. And so we've found a colored object that will go to our color wheel, and this is how we're going to manipulate the world, I think. So now you have a black and white world with hints and highlights of blue. And we have a note.
Since the beginning, we have pointed to the sky and declared it blue. It is this shared vision, this unquestioned understanding which connects us. But are you really seeing blue the same way I see it? Perhaps blue is nothing more than a shade of grey to you. Perhaps everyone in this world sees nothing but shades of grey. Don't you see, Hugh? This is why we're here.
Okay. So that still seems wrong in the audio, so apologies for having to just adjust the audio on the fly here. But this piano music in particular is really loud and striking. So I'm just going to set my settings back to the way they were before I adjusted anything, and in game I'm going to have to adjust it. And I definitely am going to have to just blame the game on this one for being imbalanced in its audio. At least in my headphones. Which, yeah, I can't focus on the game. So let's do something like that and see what that sounds like when we unpause. We'll have to hear more of that voice acting. So, to comment on that, yeah, almost certainly humans do have different names for different colors. I happen to know at least one person who is colorblind, and they will often argue, because they didn't realize they were colorblind until they were very old, and they'll often argue that one color is one. They'll say crimson is bright red instead of dark red or something like that. It seems like we can't go back to the black and white world that we saw before. We now see outside this door that it is blue. There is also very much a possibility that in different locations around the world, in different environmental settings, whether it's maybe pollution or maybe just different temperatures, times of years, that the blue that is being filtered via the oceans in to make the oceans basically act like a prism, and really there's just one ocean on Earth, but we split it up for convenience sake. It acts as a big prism to the wide spectrum of visible light that actually comes from the sun, and bounces. The light bounces, filters through the ocean, bounces up into the atmosphere, and then is reflected back and forth between the surface of the Earth and the oceans and the atmosphere, and that's why we think that the sky is blue. At least that's my understanding of what it is. It might not really be going through the oceans as much as it might be going through just the moisture and the vast amount of water that actually is in clouds. Either way, the sky is blue on Earth. The sky is not blue on other planets. We know that. The sky is not blue on the moon with no atmosphere. But yeah, it is a singular thing that people can mostly agree on. Wow, the skies have cleared. What a beautiful day. So this guy seems not to really be able to see the blue. So this might be a very interesting twist, particularly with this animation style trying to accommodate this twist, in that we may have a game here that starts off black and white and just gets prettier as you play, Interesting, everything reset. It's a little zoomed in, I would say, in this environment. I imagine we'll be a little bit more zoomed out when we actually get into puzzle platforming sections. Nothing really to do here. We can see there's like bones under the earth. But yeah, if I was platforming and trying to avoid spikes, now this would be a little too zoomed in for my liking. So it seems to me like, alright, so that was an exit to get to that point. And then we're gonna have to find some like double jump ability or some way to float up using this smoke to get to that. There is clearly a collectible there. And here we have another brick wall that's blocking our way. The second NES Zelda game, The Adventures of Link, had cities like this that you would go in and in very small ways interact with people and do shops, and it was The Adventure of Link was very much closer to what RPGs games became. So now you see immediately the game does zoom out quite a bit from that point. Hello. Hugh, is that you? Thank goodness, I've been trapped for days. Help me get out of here. I keep hearing noises. It's creeping me out. Alright. So we are very much in the tutorial aspect here, where now we can switch everything to blue, and then that makes the objects, the rocks, disappear into the background. The rocks, they just disappeared. I don't know how you did it. Who cares? I'm saved. Thank you. See, now if you're not a kid, then how come that guy is twice as tall as you are? And we got an achievement for getting literally that far. And see, if I was to try and use the right stick to change that, it's not going to let me keep it there. In fact, I don't think I can stay in the black world, the mono world, at all. But you can see how dark and spooky the world looks without any color. It kind of has like a subtle message that's being told here is, don't be afraid of colors. This is the world. This is how spooky the world would be without color. It's still pretty spooky in the edges, though. Now, let's see if the audio is balanced this time.
When you enter a cave expecting a waterfall, the chances are your expectations will be met. But if you discard those expectations, don't you think instead the cave will be full of surprises? I ask for you, Hugh, to abandon your expectations, to pull me back from the brink of unreality. I need you to see the world not for what it is, but for what it can be.
So it's a very artistic message. I would say, though, that we probably are still, audio-wise, a little too loud. Let's try 65. Yeah. So the one thing I would say here though is I'm not really expecting a waterfall when I enter a cave. I don't enter caves, but B, I wouldn't really expect that. See, now the weirdness here is it does feel like there should be a way to go back to this dark world so I could stand on this platform and so I could platform back up. So it may be very much a case that we need to unlock a black hue color to reach secret areas. Yeah. If I go into a cave, what I would be expecting would be bats, insects, night crawlers, things like that. I would not inherently expect waterfalls. I would expect maybe standing ponds. Yeah, I'm in a very weird position though, just trying to figure out what the relationship is between Hugh and whoever's writing these notes. Whether she's a mother figure or whether she's a romance figure and Hugh just happens to be short. Oh, hello there. You startled me. I'm just resting my legs. Don't play too close to the water now. So again, that comes off like you're a kid. So what happens if I go in the water? You drown, I'd assume, and then you respawn. Okay, we're not seeing any hearts or any permanent deaths or anything like that. That would be unacceptable to me for this kind of game. And in fairness, this is a puzzle platformer, so I'm not expecting precision platforming, high difficulty frustration platforming that you would see in something like Super Meat Boy or the thousands of other full of spike platforming games that are on Steam, of which none of which I want to really play. I heard that there are caves through the waterfall. Apparently they stretch for miles. I'd never go myself though. It's far too dangerous. I am hoping at some point that we will color the background. I see in a lot of bad games when I'm looking at new games on Steam, which I do in my live streams every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You see a lot of cases where there are platforming worlds where the tile set of the walls around you, which normally need to be there, are just extremely repetitive and ugly. And at the moment I can dismiss the tile set of the walls around me in this world as simply being a artistic decision. But if I spent several hours playing this game and make it all the way to the end and it's still just blackness, wouldn't be super happy about that. So now we're doing box sliding. And I wonder if there's going to be a specific point here where we will just enter some sections and not actually need to shift the colors. Here we're starting to see the spikes. And had I shifted to blue when I first walked through the area, we would have hit the rocks. And I assume I'm not supposed to move the rocks. We have a fairly long jump and not a high enough jump to hit those spikes. So that's fairly safe. If we can't reset the worlds back to black and white, yeah, I want to go back here for a second, then the way to reset things probably is going to be something along the lines of exiting an area and then re-entering an area, which may be the trick we're doing here, is that we changed everything to blue. And then we enter this section. We can continue forward, so I would assume that going back here. Well, no, you can't do it that way either. So there must be some ability that we unlock later. This little fountainhead bowls feels kind of out of place. Like this is some kind of weird temple of an ancient society or something. And there's yet another section that yeah. We can at least go back here. And we've now found one of 28 vials. Which that means something. We're going to be collecting more of these vials. And I think what we're doing now is we're rolling. And we've got some bloodiness happening. So it's not just rolling, it's running. I'm just finding every single way to die here, aren't I? Yep. And that's certainly something that can be part of the problem in these kinds of games, is that you can end up dying quite a bit. And I find that often more frustrating than it's worth. So all of that was to just get that one collectible and avoid dying. And then now we're backtracking, which definitely seems like that is going to be a theme, is that we're going to backtrack with other abilities, which is going to be very Metroidvania-esque. We're zooming in again, so that tells me something big is about to happen. We have this shaman-like character look at us and walk away. Then we're zooming out and going up a ton of stairs. Not stars. Now we have purple. And so now that we have two colors, maybe shifting between the two colors gives you a possibility. And there's an achievement for getting the color purple. Right. Interesting. It's all very different looking. And look, the door is purple. So we can't go back. So this whole world, basically, I don't think we can go backwards here. Not unless we could make the rocks disappear somehow. Because I can't grab the rocks here. It won't let me shift anything. So there's no going back. We're gonna have to do this whole part a second time. And it certainly makes sense now why they're warning you off of the idea. Going backwards. So as we'll get back to the mountain place and then we'll call it an episode. I'm experimenting with trying to make shorter episodes in series, and this is a game. If we already have 2 colors, I can see just by the icon, it looks like there's about 9 colors in total that will unlock. So if we are 2/9 of the way through, you're roughly halfway through what I imagine would be the first half of the game. If I was to guess, we could perhaps get a better estimate if we simply looked at the map here. Yeah. It doesn't feel like this is going to be that long of a game if we've already found 2 out of 4 flasks in this waterfall cave, and we've already been to the waterfall part of the cave, and we see that we've already been to the lighthouse part of the world. Yeah, the whole game itself isn't striking me as being very long unless we get to that final area on the far left, which I imagine that's the final area, and find that that is just the beginning and this is just a tutorial world. But yeah, one of 2 things are going to happen. Either the world is going to expand, or the puzzles are going to get more difficult, or this is just going to be a short game. Which, nothing wrong with a short game as long as it's short and sweet and not short and bitter. So far so good. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, and keep on watching. Thanks.